Venus enters Pisces. Saturn enters Aries. This week is a paradox. Venus in Pisces is dissolving rigid boundaries around receiving, asking us to soften and flow. And Saturn is entering Aries, initiating a new 2.5 year cycle of intentional structure and leadership. And here's what I want you to understand. Sometimes the most liberating thing you can do is create a container. Let me tell you about a client who discovered this. She's an event producer and homesteader. And when we started working together, she was struggling with something a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with. Her life and business were completely intertwined. And I mean, completely. She'd process a goat to get tallow for her business products, but that also put meat in her freezer for herself and her dogs, who are also a business expense. She'd invest in her homestead, which was both her home and her primary business asset. She'd go to a business conference, but it was also personal development and connection with her best friend. The line between business and personal felt impossible to draw, and traditional financial advice was telling her to separate everything cleanly. Business account here, personal account there, track every single thing, know exactly what percentage of that goat processing was business versus personal. And it was making her feel like she was failing, like she wasn't doing it right, like her integrated life was a problem to fix. But when we looked at her asset code, which comes from her second house in astrology, everything shifted. Her second house has Gemini on the cusp. And what that revealed is that her value is built through adaptive, interwoven resource use. She's not designed for rigid separation. She's designed for conscious mapping of complexity. And here's what she said after we uncovered this: the two are so deeply interconnected, and that's okay. She also said, "This made me feel less like I should be dividing everything." The relief in her voice was palpable because she'd been fighting against her own design, trying to force herself into a financial structure that didn't fit the reality of her life. So we didn't try to separate everything perfectly. We created flexible systems that could honor the gray areas, that could track the interconnection consciously without forcing artificial divisions. Venus in Pisces this week is asking you to release rigid boundaries that don't serve you, to let things flow, to trust the interconnection. But Saturn entering Aries is saying, and you still need structure, you still need containers, you still need systems. The key is building structure that supports your flow instead of restricting it. I see this all the time. People think structure means rigid rules and perfect separation and tracking every penny. And for some people, that works beautifully. But for others, that kind of structure creates so much resistance that they end up avoiding their money entirely. The structure you need isn't the one that cages you into someone else's idea of proper business. It's the one that creates just enough container that your creativity can actually breathe. Freedom isn't the absence of structure, it's structure designed for your rhythm. My client didn't need to separate her business and personal life completely. She needed to name the gray areas, she needed to map them consciously. And as Saturn moves into Aries for the next 2.5 years, we're all going to be building new structures around leadership and initiative and doing things our own way. But those structures only work if they're designed for how you actually operate. If you're someone with an integrated life where your work and your values and your home and your creativity all feed each other, you don't need to apologize for that. You need systems that can hold that complexity. If you're someone who needs clear boundaries and separation to feel safe, beautiful, build that. The point isn't that there's one right way to structure your money. The point is that your structure needs to match your design. As Venus enters Pisces and Saturn enters Aries this week, you're getting an invitation to build containers that actually support your flow, not containers that force you into someone else's model. What if you stopped stop trying to force your money into generic systems and instead ask, what rhythm does my money want to move in? What structure would actually support me instead of restricting me? My client, she's building flexible systems now. She's mapping the complexity instead of fighting it. And she's releasing the idea that her integrated life is a problem. That's the work of this week, not forcing rigid boundaries, building conscious containers that set you free. Take the Cosmic Money Style quiz to see where you are now with money. It's your first step toward the codes that will get you where you want to be. Go to cosmicb.link/quiz